Hello friends and welcome to Sustainable Prepping, your home for fear-free emergency preparedness and a sustainable life. My name is Brecky and today we are going to be talking about how to build a food scarcity focused pantry and some questions to ask yourself as you begin to prepare for potential food scarcity. If you're new here, I want to say a great big welcome. I'm so glad you found my slice of the internet. And if you're not new, I want to say welcome back. We are growing a community that spreads knowledge and empowerment through preparedness, not through fear. So I'm excited for you to be a part of this community. And if you like my videos, the best way that you can support me and the freest way that you can support me is to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and to share this video with a friend. Send it to a friend, send it to a family member, post it in an online community, put it on your Instagram, link this video on your Instagram in your stories, tag me and let me know what you think. These are free ways that you can support me and my channel and help spread this message, which is really awesome because I'm a one-woman show. So the more help I can get, the better and further this message can be spread. Today, we're going to be diving into that slightly anxiety-producing topic of food scarcity. Should we be worried about food scarcity? Possibly. There are a few things happening in the world that make it a potentiality that food could be scarce. However, if you live in North America or the global West, the truth is we are not likely to experience extreme food scarcity like our neighbors in the global South. Now that is a whole different video I can get into in a different time, but as other preppers have been saying, we are likely to continue to have some of the items that we're going to talk about being scarce. They're just going to be more expensive, but there will be countries who won't have any of these items, particularly items like wheat, because grain from Ukraine is not being shipped out. And China is not shipping out its grains because it's worried about food scarcity. So the global supply of grains, of wheat in particular, are limited right now. What that's going to translate like for the United States will likely be an increase in wheat products, but not the kinds of scarcity that most people are afraid of. So before you get super anxious, let me calm and say that if you are in North America, if you're watching this from the United States or Canada, and probably most of Europe, though the geopolitical situation could change things, but for the most part, if you're watching this in North America, and the majority of my viewers are watching in North America, you don't need to worry about a complete lack of things like wheat. It's just going to be more expensive. The other items that most people are saying we're going to see significant shortages of will be meat and dairy. Now, this is due to a whole host of factors that, again, are a whole video in and of themselves. And if you're interested, let me know. I'm happy to make that video. But for this video, basically, it's that one, climate has been bad for animals and animals have died. Two, the avian flu is killing our birds and making them unedible. 3, grain prices are really, really high, and that means maintaining large herds of cattle or dairy animals is just not sustainable for farmers. All of these factors and more mean that we are likely to see either a lack of options when it comes to meat in our local grocery stores, or it's going to become very, very expensive. Now, we've already seen close to doubling in price of the cost of meat over the last 18 months, but it's likely to continue to go up. Now, I've already made a video on how to prep for a recession, how to recession-proof your pantry, and I'm gonna link that video right there and make sure it's down in the description because I don't want you to miss it. I have great tips on how you can prepare your pantry for recession, and all of those tips actually apply to preparing for food scarcity. But I wanna go a little bit of a different direction in talking about food scarcity here. A lot of us are really concerned about feeding our families, and what do we do if our traditional diets, our go-to items aren't available? What do we do if our dollar just doesn't stretch as far? Or even if we had the money, it's not going to be on our shelves. Again, realistically, complete lack of flour, complete lack of meat, and complete lack of dairy are unlikely if you live in North America, and again, most of my viewers do. However, they could become so expensive that you can't afford to add them, or at least add them as regularly, into your budget. So what can you start doing now to prepare yourself for food scarcity? Well, the first thing you can do is begin to intentionally build your pantry. Intentionally building your pantry means not just hoarding and grabbing everything you can, but thinking about what do you eat. If you had to pick anywhere from maybe 6 to 10 meals that you eat all the time, look at those components. What do you eat regularly? And is it something that we're likely to see become a major staple that goes scarce? For example, if you eat tacos and you usually use ground beef, is it important that you have the beef? Or could you start using a lentil recipe to switch it up? Could you start using black beans and making a vegetarian version? Could you go for eggs and black beans and things like that to switch up the proteins? Part of being able to thrive during food scarcity is having food flexibility. If our first major point is to start building your pantry and to know what you eat so you build a pantry that works for you, the second major point is to be able to eat more. The standard Western diet is actually very inflexible. It is very meat-centric, very dairy-heavy, and has a limited numbers of vegetables and grains that are considered acceptable. In fact, go to any grocery store and count the varieties of vegetables and fruits available to you. You'll probably have less than 50 or 60 varieties. Did you know that there's over 2,000 varieties of potato alone? And yet we in the United States only eat like 3 on the whole. So this is important. Learn to be flexible. If you're a family that usually eats meat with every meal, I'm telling you right now, you're gonna have to change the way you eat. You need to find 2 to 3 vegetarian meals and not just pasta and sauce. You can't count that one. Pasta will become scarce. It's a wheat product. So outside of pasta and sauce, y'all, pick 3 other meals, okay? Former vegetarian telling you now, as a meat eater, find 3 vegetarian meals that aren't pasta and sauce. This is Mama Brekkie coming down hard, okay? You can do it. You cannot eat meat, I promise. Vegetarian food is delicious. Once you have those recipes, how can you switch those up? How can you make them seasonal? How can you augment them based on what's cheapest at the store? Learning to be flexible with your diet. Know how to cook rice and beans 10 different ways, because there are like a zillion ways to make rice and beans. It's hugely important. It's important if you're already stocking rice and beans, but it's also important if you plan on building a pantry that works for food scarcity. What is most likely to happen is not that there's going to be no food available. Rather, the foods available are going to be limited, they're going to be expensive, or they're going to be unfamiliar. So, if you can have your basics stocked by building a pantry of foods you already eat and you already like, and you create food flexibility so that you know how to take your favorite taco recipe and make it with lentils, and you have enough lentils, then you have the flexibility for when food is scarce, you are confident enough in the kitchen to take things that are available and make them work and stay healthy and stay happy. My third recommendation as far as building a pantry that works for food scarcity is going to be getting to know any local farmers that are in your area. Knowing what is going to be grown locally means that you can begin to plan on what you don't need to necessarily stock. If you live in the deep south like me, sweet potatoes grow gangbusters here, so I don't need to worry about trying to dehydrate or freeze sweet potatoes. They are gonna be fine. If I ever get some property, I'll be able to grow sweet potatoes, no problem. But it will be harder for me to grow brassicas. It will be harder for me to grow certain kinds of fruits because those won't grow in my soil. That is where I can get in touch with farmers. That is where I can begin to store frozen, freeze-dried, or dehydrated foods. That is where I can plan to perhaps let go of how much I love eating certain fruits. For example, I love citrus, but I can't grow citrus here. I mean, I'd have to have a greenhouse, and I don't have that. So I might not be able to have oranges if we have a food scarcity problem, but that's okay. Because I'm beginning to build relationships with my local farmers, I know what they grow, I know where they are, I will know how to be in touch with them. We can begin to augment the grocery chain system, and I can begin to buy from them directly. I mean, you can already do this through a CSA. This is going to cut down on some of your food scarcity. It's going to put you in touch with the local community, and it's going to put you in touch with seasonal eating. When you build that food pantry, then what you are aiming to do is build a pantry that you will add to, right? You're gonna still have access to something. You're not trying to build one of these emergency pantries where 100% of your nutrition is coming from your pantry. Rather, you wanna build in what you are most likely to be missing so that you have some of it when the time comes. So what that would look like now, if we take into account building a pantry of food you eat, Having food flexibility and knowing your local farmer could mean that you buy a deep freezer and you go ahead and invest in half a cow today. That's a lot of money, but if you have it, then you can eat on half a cow for years. My family of 6 bought a half a cow. We didn't even keep the whole half of a cow because we couldn't put it all in our freezer. So we really had more like a third of a cow, and we still have meat. 14 months later, we still have meat from that half a cow, and we eat a lot of beef. The point is, you can begin that planning ahead, and if you have those local connections, you may have access. If you're a family that doesn't eat a lot of flour, maybe you're gluten-free, then storing wheat is not going to be as important to you. But it is important to remember that if wheat products are no longer available, then rice-based products or other, corn-based products, these are going to start going off the shelves, so you can plan ahead. Oh, I cook primarily with cassava flour. I'm going to buy more because if wheat becomes scarce, that might now put a strain on cassava flour as a replacement item. It won't happen initially, it will happen later on, but you can slowly prepare for that. If you're someone who loves your steak and potatoes, then you need to start creating freezer space for vet steak. And you also need to create flexibility to let go of how much steak you eat. This is a part of really being resilient. It's not that you can store everything, but rather you learn the skill to be able to be flexible. You store your staples, like your preferred grain, and if you want flour, you store flour, but also having rice, having beans, having meat and dairy that you keep in a deep freeze, or you figure out how to make shelf stable, whichever way works for you. And then you realize that fruit and vegetables will still be available. They'll just be more expensive. Don't stress about those items as though no food will be available. Rather, focus on the big ticket items because you'll always have, in food scarcity, there will be things you can buy. They just might be more expensive. With staples on lock, you can then spend that money on those more expensive items to round out what you have in your pantry. So you're going to need to look at what you actually eat. You're going to want to stock the things that are likely to be scarce to the best of your ability. You're going to want to create some flexibility in your diet, including giving up meat and dairy and creating some recipes that you feel comfortable and confident in that don't require those items that we know are going to be scarce. You're going to want to make connections with local farmers in order to have a local access to fresh fruit and veg. And you're going to want to have some confidence knowing that whatever you've stocked in those main staple items from your first pantry inventory are going to be able to be supplemented by fresh produce as time comes on. Unless we face an absolute climate apocalypse in which salt rains down from the sky and ruins everything forever, there's always going to be something growing. There's always going to be farmers producing. It will just be more expensive. Figuring out what you eat and stocking those major staples, grains, proteins, right? Fats. If you have those in your pantry, whatever they are, because I don't know what you eat, okay? Whatever they are based on what you eat, then you're going to be able to spend the money you do have on the fresh produce to supplement the pantry that you're creating. I know several of you are probably going, Brecky, please just give me a list of what I should put in my pantry. And I have that list for you. It's my quick and easy inventory bundle, and you can find that on my website. It has everything, not just for your pantry, but for your whole household. So if you do want a downloadable pantry guide as well as whole house inventory to know that you are prepped, you can check that out on my website. But the truth is, I can't tell you exactly what to stock because I don't know what you eat. Of course, you should have things like salt and sugar. You should have a flour of your choice and a grain of your choice. You should have some proteins and some fats. But if you hate legumes, then telling you to stock black beans and lentils is not useful. That's why my first recommendation is just to know what you want to eat and then to plan ahead. Comment down below and let me know, what would you add to your food scarcity pantry? And what videos would you like me to make in the future? I'm always looking for new ideas that meet your needs and cover your interests. If you want to hang out with me some more, find me over on Instagram, and my Facebook page is down in the description. And until the next video, y'all, happy prepping.